This plastic insert came with my controller, and like most people, I would normally throw it away without thinking twice. But the shape immediately caught my attention, and I started wondering if it could turn into something much more useful. Instead of letting it end up in the bin, I decided to use it as a mold and see if I could transform it into a custom concrete controller stand. The first step was preparing the concrete mixture. To get the best possible finish, I needed fine sand. The problem was that the sand I had was mixed with smaller stones and larger pieces of aggregate, which would leave a rough surface and make it much harder to work with. Using a sieve, I carefully separated the larger particles until only the finest sand remained. This takes a little time, but it's definitely well worth it if you're looking for a cleaner and smoother finish. One thing I learned very quickly is to prepare more material than you think you'll need. It might seem like it's enough at first, but trust me, it's better to have extra than to run out halfway through your project. You'll see exactly why later on. With the sand prepared, it was time to mix the concrete. If you don't have a scale, don't worry. A simple 2:1 ratio works perfectly fine. Use 2 parts of fine sand to 1 part cement. You'll end up with a strong and reliable mixture for projects like this. So basically 2 cups of sand and 1 cup of cement. I decided to use a scale because I wanted the measurements to be as accurate as possible. In the end, I measured out 500 grams of sand and 250 grams of cement, giving me a total of 750 grams while keeping the same 2:1 ratio. Once everything was measured, I mixed the dry ingredients together thoroughly. You can use a stick, a fork, or even a drill with a mixing attachment if you have one. The important thing is to make sure that the sand and cement are completely combined before adding any water. That's something that I didn't do, so please don't forget this step. Now comes to the most important step of the entire process. When adding water, take your time. Add only a small amount at a time and continue mixing before adding any more. It's much easier to add extra water than it is to fix a mixture that becomes too runny. Patience here makes all the difference. After a few minutes of mixing, the consistency should become thick and smooth, almost like a yogurt. That's when you know it's ready. With the mixture complete, it's finally time to fill in the mold. Rather than pouring everything in at once, I added little at a time, making sure that the concrete reached every corner and every edge. Taking your time here helps eliminate empty spaces and gives the finished piece a much cleaner appearance. Once the mold is nearly full, I level the surface as much as possible. Unfortunately, I had just slightly underestimated how much concrete I needed, leaving the mold a little lower than I actually wanted. That mistake taught me an important lesson. Always prepare more mixture than you think you'll need. It's far better to have a little more left over than to realize you're short once the mold is already full. Before leaving it to cure, there was one final step. Air bubbles trapped inside the concrete can leave unwanted holes and imperfections. So I gently tapped the sides of the mold to encourage them to rise to the surface. After a few moments, the top became much smoother, giving me confidence that the final finish would look much cleaner. Since the plastic mold wasn't particularly rigid, I reinforced it with tape to help it hold its shape while the concrete cured. With everything finally in place, all that was left to do was wait. Or at least, that's what I should have done. Unfortunately, I got a little impatient, and that's where things started to go wrong. With the concrete left to cure overnight, it was finally time for the moment of truth. At first, everything looked promising. The concrete had hardened nicely, and I was excited to see how the final piece had turned out. But as I slowly removed it from the mold, I immediately realized something wasn't quite right. As you can see, I accidentally broke part of the stand while removing it. Looking back, there are 2 reasons why. Firstly, the concrete was simply too thin at the back because I hadn't added enough mixture to the mold. Secondly, I didn't let the concrete cure for long enough. Ideally, I should have left it to cure for at least 3 to 5 days before removing it from the mold. Although it broke, I wasn't about to throw it away. Instead, I decided to make the best of it by carefully chipping away, hoping I could still turn this failed attempt into the controller stand I originally envisioned. One of the things I love most about working with concrete is that mistakes are really permanent. A little extra concrete can easily fix small imperfections, and after a bit of sanding, you'll hardly know that they were ever there. For a first attempt, I was genuinely surprised by how well it turned out. The shape came out exactly as I hoped, and once the controller was placed on top, it fit perfectly. Despite its simple design, the weight of the concrete gives it a premium feel, keeping it firmly in place on the desk without sliding around. It's amazing to think that all this started with a piece of plastic packaging that most people would have thrown away. It became something genuinely useful. And honestly, that's one of my favorite things about making projects like this. This project may not have been perfect, but every build teaches you something new, and each one gets better than the last. This is only the beginning. Make sure you like and subscribe because I have a seriously good project in the works that you definitely don't want to miss out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.